Hello everyone, my name is Josh and welcome to One Whimsical and Interesting Musings. And today for you I have a book review of the novel Marabou, Stork, Nightmares by Irvine Welsh. This is a book that is by the same author as the man behind Trainspotting, a book about a group of friends who become drug addicts and have to navigate life and all sorts of other complications after coming off of drugs, particularly heroin. But yes, this novel is completely different to Trainspotting in the sense that it's told from a completely different perspective, but it has all the same trademarks as Trainspotting. There is absolutely douchebag characters, there is, strong language. The novel is written in a phonetic Scottish accent, so it might be a little bit difficult to start off with, but the essential premise is rather interesting. The main character is Roy Strang, who is a 40-something-year-old who is in a coma when we first meet him, and he is jumping back and forth between two different versions of reality. There is the present day, the alert present, which is where he's in the hospital bed. He's being interrupted by nurses and other visitors, friends and family who are visiting him to see if he's okay. And then there's the other half that is essentially done in a alternate present where he is in the wilds of South Africa with his friend Sandy Jameson, who is a footballer, and him and his friend are essentially going to track down this Marabou Stork, which basically is a physical manifestation that Roy believes is responsible for all the wrong turns he's taken in his life, all the downward spirals. He's basically created a manifestation of all his wrongdoings and all his troubles. And along the way, we get a lot of messed up stuff, including football violence, domestic violence, child abuse, alcoholism, drug addiction, bullying, and all sorts of other things. I just want to say right off the bat that this book is incredibly hard-hitting and really harrowing read. There's a lot of racist language, there's a lot of homophobic slurs, there's a lot of sexism, there's a lot of jokes about, all sorts of different things like, being intoxicated and doing all sorts of, other inappropriate things. But what's really interesting about this book, despite its very controversial levels of strong language and very upsetting scenes, this book is actually a very interesting character study, and what really is at the heart of this book is a story about a man who is literally gone off the rails. He's gone off the rails in every possible respect. He has literally become a outcast in every sense of the word. He's a bully. He is absolutely, judgmental, and he is horrendous. But he's a guy who, as we get to know Roy and we get to be impartial to his kind of, flashback sequences, yes, he does do horrible stuff, and he tries to frame it as if it's on a small, the horrible, life-altering stuff that he's involved in is viewed from his eyes on a much more smaller scale than the reality. His culpability is much more smaller scale than the reality. You do really get an insight to who he is as a person and how he functions in that respect. But as the story goes on, we realise that Roy has a lot more to his character than meets the eye. And that's the beauty of Irvine Welsh's writing overall, because what really is incredible about him as a writer, and this goes for the likes of Stephen King or Gillian Flynn, these characters are, a lot of their characters are totally unlikable, but what really makes them work is how the author approaches their psychology. And the way Irvine Welsh does it is totally out of this world, and it's worth the price of admission alone. So there's a lot of very, hard-hitting stuff. There's a lot of, hard-hitting scenes of drug addiction, domestic abuse, sexual assault, and other things as well. And of course, I've even mentioned child abuse as well. But even though those scenes are very hard-hitting and very difficult to read at times, literally when I first read this book, I had to put it down and go and have a cup of tea or, go and watch some cartoons because it's that hard-hitting. But despite all that, the book is actually very well written, and again, it's written in a very phonetic accent, so you do find yourself if you are reading this for the very first time, it is a bit of a difficult thing to struggle through. But the book manages to really pull you through, because you're jumping back from all these different perspectives. It can come across a bit jarring, but what really is great is that you're kind of still asking yourself the question, how did Roy get to this situation where he is literally in a hospital bed in a coma? How did he get to this stage? And the book manages to, answer all those questions as you go on through it. Now, as you can see, the book is not that long. It's actually pretty, interesting to see how short this book is, because when I first picked this up, all the way back in 2013, I want to say, I actually was quite surprised when the shop owner of Waterstones, the person who was running the shop at the time, put this book in my hand. I literally thought, really, is it really that long? Like, is it really that short? But really, I actually really kind of liked it, and I managed to get through it within just a few days, and it's such an incredible read. Yes, the character's unlikable, and if you're easily offended by homophobic language, racist comments, jokes about, jokes about sexual assault and all these other things, then you will most certainly, I definitely do caution you to avoid this book, or to give this book a bit of a miss, because honestly, it does have a lot of very hard-hitting scenes. But if you can stick with it, and you can deal with the, occasional, hard-hitting, harrowing scene, I definitely do think that this book is worth the price of admission alone. It really is incredible just to see what kind of a character portrait Irvine Welsh manages to, throw into the works. It's such an incredible read. I honestly was so gripped by the time I got to the when I got to the more harrowing scenes. I actually became so engrossed in this book that I literally, just sped through it. It's such an incredible read, and the way this book is written, there are times when, if no one's familiar with the works of Irvine Welsh, sometimes he likes to go a little bit off topic, and he tends to avoid the general structure of a lot of conventionally written novels. Like, say, for example, during the writing of a particular dialogue scene, a conversation, most authors would use speech marks at the beginning and end of a sentence to indicate when a character has started speaking and when a character has finished stopped speaking. Usually they'll add little quirks to let you know that when a certain character is speaking. Let's say, for example, when Hagrid is speaking, when he's speaking because you don't need a dialogue tag, and of course through certain, apostrophes being used in place of certain words, so when Hagrid is speaking when he is speaking in Harry Potter novels, for example. Whereas with Irvine Welsh, he will use a dash to indicate when someone has started speaking, and he will put a full stop when someone has finished speaking. And that's a very bizarre way of indicating dialogue, but I felt like that was it was a very unique take on the whole thing. But sometimes the actual structure of the book, if you can see it on page 181, that the actual text goes a little bit, off kilter and diagonal and zigzag like, and that's very interesting. It kind of indicates that his mind's just getting all kinds of glitchy and messed up, and it's actually a very interesting technique to show that this character is kind of going off the rails. So, does Roy Strang manage to track down this Marabou Stork, kill the Marabou Stork, and wake up from his coma? Well, I'm not going to tell you that. You're going to have to read the book for yourself. It's actually one of those books where I'm not going to give away the ending. I'm not even going to tell you all that much what it's about. All that I know is that Roy Strang is a football fan, as am I. I'm a Chelsea supporter. And I just think, a lot of the scenes in this book involving football hooliganism is very hard-hitting. Indeed, there's a lot of very hard-hitting scenes in this book. But again, the character study is what I came here for, and, the general overall story, and to see if Roy actually gets himself out of it. Because by the end of this book, I kind of didn't care what happened to Roy Strang. He was one of those characters that really was a character who I didn't know whether to sympathise for or to actually say, you know what, to hell with you, mate. You're horrible. You're horrendous. You're the sort of person I wouldn't like to meet in real life. But then again, so is Francis Bigby, who's played by Robert Carlyle in the film adaptation of Trainspotting. He's a guy who you think is hilarious, and he sounds like an absolute beast, an animal of a person, but if you met him in real life, you'd be terrified. And I think it's the same thing with Roy Strang. And interesting Easter egg, Roy Strang, Francis Bigby actually makes an appearance in this book in a little cameo role with the football team called the Casuals, Football Casuals, which is actually a very interesting Easter egg. It kind of ties everything together, and it gives you this impression that all of Irvine Welsh's books have some kind of connectivity between stories, which is very interesting, kind of like a Stephen King novel. So yeah, I do get that feeling, of course, Marvel. But yeah, I would definitely give this book a 5 out of 5 stars. This is an incredible read if you can get through the very offensive language and a lot of the hard-hitting, very mature scenes, and you can handle it and it's not too triggering, then I would highly recommend reading this book. It is a fantastic read. I got through it within just a few days, and it was a fantastic, fantastic book. So I would definitely recommend this. And if you want me to review more books, I will definitely review more books on this channel, because I do feel like there aren't that many book reviewers out there a lot of the time, and I do feel like I need to encourage more book reading. But yeah, I will tackle more content like shows or films or anything really, as long as it has something I actually do want to talk about, and I feel like it's not tackled enough on the platform. I do feel like I can add a few interesting insights. And I did write a script for this particular review. I had particular notes on Marabou Stork Nightmares, but I just kind of improvised it for my first official video. So I hope you guys like it, and I hope you're having a very good day. Bye. This has been Josh, and this has also been Whimsical and Interesting Musings. Take care.